Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt a persistent, quiet sense of emotional loneliness?
Hmm.
Like things might look fine on the surface, you go to work, you have relationships, but there's this underlying feeling of being unseen or unheard?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a certain frustration in close connections that you just can't quite put your finger on?
Right?
What if some of those deepest relationship struggles aren't about you being broken, but about patterns we learned way back in childhood?
That feeling is incredibly common and often confusing
Right.
because there might be no obvious bad things that happened. People might look at your life and say, but your parents weren't abusive.
Exactly. So, for this deep dive, we're jumping into some material that offers a really powerful way to understand that exact dynamic.
Oh,
We're drawing from excerpts of Dr. Lindsay C. Gibson's book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
right. And this isn't just pop psychology. The book blends a seasoned therapist's wisdom with decades of psychological research and theory, seamlessly mixed with real-life client experiences. It offers a lens to see your past in a new light.
And that's our mission today, to extract the most important insights from Dr. Gibson's work. We want to shed light on why you might feel that emotional loneliness, struggle with certain relationship patterns,
Huh?
and most importantly, show you how understanding emotional immaturity can offer a path to healing and building genuinely fulfilling connections.
And it's really important to state, like you said, it's not about assigning blame. It's about understanding your own experiences and finding a way forward.
Absolutely. So let's start by defining the core problem as the source lays it out: the
Hmm.
impact of emotionally immature parents and the specific kind of neglect it creates.
Okay.
So when the source talks about an emotionally immature parent, what does that actually look like? What are we talking about beyond just someone who isn't perfect?
That's a really good question. According to the material, these are parents who fundamentally fear genuine emotion. Like deep feelings make them uncomfortable.
Hmm.
So they pull back from emotional closeness. Their coping mechanisms often involve resisting reality. They don't like self-reflection.
Right. So admitting a mistake would require a level of emotional processing they maybe can't or won't do.
Exactly. Their immaturity makes them inconsistent and emotionally unreliable. One minute they might be fine, the next unpredictable. And crucially, their own needs or agenda can completely eclipse their child's emotional needs. They
Wow.
can be blind to what the child requires emotionally because their own internal state or priorities just take over.
And the consequence of this kind of parenting isn't just disappointment. The source points to something deeper, doesn't it?
It really does. It's emotional neglect. The book describes this as real as any physical deprivation, leading to a painful emotional loneliness.
Wow, as real as physical deprivation.
Yeah. It's not that you lacked food or shelter, necessarily, but you lack that emotional responsiveness, the feeling of being truly seen, heard, and understood on a feeling level.
And this isn't something you just grow out of. According to the source, it sticks with you.
No, it absolutely follows you. That core emptiness can remain, even if you have what looks like a successful, normal adult life. You might go to school, work, marry, raise children, but still be haunted by that core sense of emotional isolation.
Here's where it gets really powerful because the source provides some incredibly relatable stories that bring this feeling to life. Take David, for instance.
Okay.
He described growing up feeling incredibly lonely, utterly isolated, like floating in the ocean with no one around me, a sensation of emptiness and
Oh,
nothingness.
that's vivid.
But the part that truly resonates is how he said it just felt normal.
Hmm. And that's fascinating, isn't it? How that profound lack of connection becomes the baseline in childhood. You don't have a reference point for something different, so that isolation simply is your reality.
Or consider Rhonda. At age 7, even surrounded by her family by the moving truck, she felt totally alone.
Even with people right there.
Yeah. She sensed she had to figure things out by herself, too anxious to ask questions, just knowing it was on me to cope with this alone. Even with people physically present, the emotional unavailability was so profound, she felt utterly isolated.
So how does this emotional immaturity actually show up day to day? What are the specific traits?
Well, the source delves into specific characteristics. Beyond the fear of emotion and lack of self-reflection we mentioned, they're often deeply self-preoccupied and self-involved.
Right, like constantly monitoring whether their own needs are being met or if something has offended them.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
their struggle with empathy is key. They're uncomfortable with feelings, both their own and anyone else's.
Which connects to their resistance to reality-denying facts, distorting situations, blaming others rather than admitting a mistake.
Which makes sense, because Admitting fault would likely trigger uncomfortable emotions they can't handle. The source notes they have difficulty regulating emotions, overreact easily,
Uh-huh.
and often expect others to soothe them. Like they sort of outsource their emotional regulation.
That's a great way to put it. And there's also a profound inconsistency. Their personalities can feel fragmented, like poorly fitted puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
because they've shut down parts of themselves to cope.
Right.
Their moods can change unpredictably, leaving you constantly on edge, never quite sure where you stand.
And it's this very inconsistency that paradoxically can bind children tightly. The source calls it an intermittent reward situation.
Like gambling.
Exactly. You get a fleeting moment of connection or approval, but you don't know when or if it will happen again, which makes you work harder and harder to get it. It creates this powerful, almost addictive dynamic that undermines a child's sense of security.
Wow. They can also be killjoys, right? Unable to share in a child's excitement, often dismissing or criticizing it.
Yeah, or just changing the subject. And they struggle with emotional nuance, thinking in black and white terms instead of integrating complex feelings.
And when they do express feelings, the source says it's often primitive. What does that mean exactly?
It means they basically just spread their distress to everyone around them, like an emotional contagion.
Okay.
This leads to that painful role reversal where the child feels responsible for managing the parent's emotional state.
The child becomes the parent, emotionally speaking.
Precisely. And when there's a conflict, they resist genuine repair. They have an unrealistic idea of forgiveness. They want the rift to simply disappear as if it never happened without any real emotional processing or amends.
Just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. And sometimes this need for control, stemming from their own anxiety, can also manifest as using punishment, threats, or shaming tactics.
The book identifies 4 overarching types: emotional-driven, passive, and rejecting, emphasizing that while they differ in style, they all create emotional insecurity. The source excerpts we have specifically detail passive and rejecting types.
Okay, let's look at passive parents first, as they might be harder to spot as harmful from the outside, maybe.
That's right. They're often seen as more lovable, easygoing. They tend to avoid conflict at all costs, acquiescing even to dominant partners who might be harmful to the kids.
Oh, wow.
They withdraw emotionally under stress. While they might seem less overtly difficult, the source points out they can still be self-involved, sometimes relying on the child for their need for affectionate attention.
Which can feel like, the source calls it, emotional incest.
Exactly. Even if they're physically present or seem kind, the child senses they aren't reliably there for their essential emotional needs.
Right. That core unavailability is still there.
And this emotional, sometimes even physical abandonment is still deeply impactful. Molly's story illustrates this beautifully.
Tell us about Molly.
Her father was kind and affectionate, but spent most of his time puttering in the garage, leaving her vulnerable to an abusive older sister. And Molly didn't expect him to protect her. She rationalized his actions, interpreting his pot-banging noise from the garage as his way of letting her know he was still there.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. It's a child's way of making sense of that lack of protection.
Exactly. It highlights the rationalization needed to cope with the passive parent's fundamental unavailability.
Okay, and then there are the rejecting parents. Their behavior sounds much more stark.
It is. They show very little empathy and have almost impenetrable boundaries regarding their children's needs. They clearly don't want to be bothered.
So interactions are minimal or?
Yeah, interactions are usually commands, angry outbursts, or simply isolating themselves. Fundamentally, the source says they just want to be left alone.
Gosh. So growing up in this environment, children develop sophisticated, often subconscious ways to cope. The source introduces the ideas of healing fantasies and role selves.
Right. These are the ways we try to navigate that difficult reality. A healing fantasy is a secret, often unconscious belief about how others, particularly parents, should change to finally make you feel valued.
Like, if I'm just good enough.
Exactly. If I'm just good enough, if I try hard enough, they will finally see me and give me the love or attention I need. The source highlights how trying to act on this fantasy in adulthood, like constantly trying to get a partner to meet a need your parents couldn't, is incredibly frustrating. Because you're trying to get something from someone who can't give it.
Right, you're projecting that childhood need onto someone else. And the role self, how does that work?
That's the personality or persona you develop to feel valuable or have a secure place in the family, especially if your genuine self isn't welcomed or seen.
Like the little grown-up.
Exactly. The little grown-up who takes care of siblings or parents, or the child who acts like they have absolutely no needs. The source notes that sometimes EI parents even unconsciously pressure children into these roles because it fits the parent's own unresolved issues or fantasies.
Oh, interesting.
And paradoxically, a highly self-sufficient child might not trigger the EI parent's need for enmeshment,
Yeah.
leading to them being sort of left alone, but not in the good way, still neglected.
We see examples of these dynamics in stories like Heather's. She longed for her mother's attention, while her sister Marlo was clearly the idealized favorite.
Hmm.
Her mother's adoration about Marlo, constantly talking her up, felt like a deep rejection of Heather.
That must have been so painful. Or Mark, whose independent nature meant he couldn't really enmesh with his father, who then turned his attention to the more emotionally immature younger brother, Brett, who maybe could fulfill that enmeshment need for the father.
Right. And Bill's story, where his parents, after he left home, became enmeshed with homeless people through their church.
Yeah, talking about them constantly while rarely mentioning Bill's own life. It shows how that underlying need for connection or control finds an outlet, even shifting outside the immediate family circle when the original target isn't available.
So these coping mechanisms manifest differently. The source also identifies two main coping styles children develop: externalizing and internalizing.
Yes. Externalizers tend to look outside themselves. They blame others, look to external circumstances for solutions, and may deny or escape reality.
Okay.
They can be impulsive and self-focused. The book notes that many emotionally immature parents themselves are externalizers, and they may indulge their externalizing children,
Oh.
sometimes failing to protect other children from potentially abusive siblings who operate this way.
And then there are internalizers. This is where I suspect many listeners might find themselves relating.
You're likely right. Internalizers look within for solutions. They self-reflect, take responsibility, and try to grapple with reality. They are often thoughtful, empathic, and prone to feeling guilty.
Right, they take it all on themselves.
Exactly. Their inner world is a significant place for them. The source stresses that internalizers are typically highly perceptive and sensitive, which makes the emotional neglect from an EI parent particularly painful.
And because they are sensitive and also tend to shrink from bothering others, that makes them vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. They become easy to overlook and neglect. They might believe that if they just hide their needs, are helpful, or are good enough, they will finally earn love.
Ah, that ties back to the healing fantasy.
Precisely. But the source is very clear. Unconditional love cannot be bought with conditional behavior. Internalizers often feel they need too much from others, or that their needs are somehow wrong.
Logan's story really illustrates the internalizer experience powerfully.
Tell us about Logan.
She felt confused and rejected by her parents' seemingly normal but fundamentally unempathetic behavior. This led to profound self-doubt. She literally asked herself, was I crazy for needing so much?
Wow. That self-doubt is so common.
Yeah. She was high-achieving and successful on the outside, but felt a deep emptiness, compensating by people-pleasing, feeling valued only for what she did for others, not for who she was.
And internalizers also tend to do excessive emotional work in relationships, don't they?
Yes. Listening, reassuring, giving advice, often essentially parenting the parent or their partner.
Right. The source describes the no-win situation where parents dump their issues but ignore the child's advice. Or think of the woman who realized only after her divorce just how much emotional labor she had been doing for years, constantly trying to calm and manage her emotionally inept husband.
Exhausting. And this pressure to perform that emotional work or hide their needs can lead them to ignore their own feelings or physical limits.
Absolutely. We see this with Leah, who hid her feelings due to a critical mother, always wondering, how can I make myself enough?
Or Lena, whose habit of ignoring fatigue to please a demanding mother eventually resulted in physical breakdown. Her body basically forced her to stop.
This brings us to a critical part of the journey described in the source: finding the true self and the path to awakening.
The true self is that, like, the authentic core beneath all those coping mechanisms and role selves.
Exactly. The source defines it as the part of you that naturally wants to grow, be known, express itself genuinely, expand, and be sincere. It has, and I love this quote, no interest in whatever desperate ideas you came up with in childhood regarding a healing fantasy or role self.
Huh. Okay, so those coping strategies served a purpose then, but they aren't who you truly are meant to be.
Right. And psychological symptoms like panic attacks, anger, or depression. The source doesn't see these just as problems to be eliminated, correct?
No, it frames them as a potential wake-up call. They can be a sign that the true self has reached a limit with the old role playing, and that the struggle to deny our emotional truth is breaking down.
That sounds like it could be difficult. Things might get worse before they get better, those old structures crumble.
It absolutely can be. The source touches on ideas similar to positive disintegration, where old maladaptive patterns break down to allow for growth and integration of new knowledge. It's part of becoming more emotionally complex and autonomous. And crucially, learning to tolerate difficult emotions rather than avoiding them is key to unlocking this developmental potential.
Let's look at some examples of this awakening process from the source. Virginia's story sounds powerful.
Yes, her panic attacks, triggered by her critical brother, became the catalyst for therapy. Through them, she realized how unaccepted she felt as a child, began questioning the male infallibility story she'd internalized,
Mm.
and started collapsing her weak little girl role self. She realized she had the agency to choose contact and acknowledge her true feelings about her father and brother.
Wow, that's huge. Or Tilde with her mother.
Tildy's exaggerated guilt and gratitude toward her complaining mother masked her real feelings. Therapy helped her access the uncomfortable physical feeling in her body related to her mother's complaints, and she quietly whispered, "I don't like her." That was her emotional truth finally breaking through the ironclad family story she'd lived by. Just acknowledging it was a breakthrough.
That quiet whisper can be revolutionary. Mike's story is also a powerful illustration of hitting bottom leading to awakening.
Yeah, hitting rock bottom after job loss and divorce forced him to stop performing and confront a life built on pleasing others, particularly his mother and wife.
Hey,
He realized the immense cost of not being himself, even seeing his financial debt as a metaphor for it. This crisis allowed him to find values aligned with his true self and begin appreciating himself, even redefining success. He said, "Get rid of success, and then you see who you are as a person."
that's profound. And Patsy, who struggled with acknowledging her own competence.
Patsy initially recoiled at recognizing her own maturity and strength compared to her impulsive husband and petulant mother. She was using a kind of false humility and idealization to ignore reality.
Because facing it was uncomfortable, maybe disloyal feeling.
Exactly. Accepting her own maturity allowed her to become objective, set healthy limits, and stop pretending to be less capable or grown up than she was.
So, this path involves facing uncomfortable feelings, recognizing your physical and emotional boundaries, redefining what success and worth mean to you,
Uh-huh.
and fundamentally reclaiming your own strengths and capabilities. Things emotionally immature parents often fail to reflect or even actively undermine.
Right. So once you start recognizing these patterns and feeling your true self emerge, the next critical step is navigating your current relationships differently.
Okay, and the source is very clear. Healing isn't about changing the parent or the difficult person. It's about changing how you interact with them.
Yes. It introduces powerful strategies for dealing with EI parents or any self-involved person called the maturity awareness approach.
Okay, what does that involve?
The first principle is detached observation. This means stepping back emotionally to observe the interaction without getting swept up in their drama or emotional contagion.
Like being a scientist of the interaction.
Kind of, reminding yourself it's their distress, not yours, helps you stay grounded. You might feel some empathy, but you don't have to become as distressed as they are.
Okay, detached observation. What's next?
Then, identifying achievable goals. This is about setting specific, realistic outcomes for interactions that you can control. The crucial part here is not making the goal dependent on the other person changing, showing empathy, or apologizing.
So you can't make your goal get mom to understand how much she hurt me.
Exactly. The source uses the potent analogy of Annie's mother and a snake phobia. You can't force someone to tolerate something they're terrified of, like emotional intimacy. Your goals are about your behavior, expressing yourself politely, setting a boundary, or achieving a practical outcome, not fixing them.
Got it. Goals you can actually control. And the third part.
And finally, managing the interaction. With detached observation and your achievable goal in mind, you steer the conversation or encounter towards that outcome, staying focused. This keeps you in your thinking brain rather than falling back into old emotional patterns or trying to force a connection that isn't possible.
Okay, so observe, set a realistic goal for yourself, and manage the interaction towards that goal.
Exactly. Annie's story perfectly illustrates this. She repeatedly tried to get her mother, Betty, to understand how hurt she was, but Betty would just deny it or refuse responsibility. Annie felt like an emotional hostage.
I can imagine.
By applying the maturity awareness approach, she learned her mother had this snake phobia of emotional intimacy. She couldn't handle it. So Annie found a way forward without needing her mother's understanding.
How does she manage the interactions?
For example, calling on a birthday but keeping the conversation cool and brief, or ending it calmly when it became uncomfortable. She felt proud because she had separated her mother's behavior from her own sense of worth.
That's real progress. Carissa used this approach too, right, with her father?
Yes, with her dominating father, Bob, who tended to lecture everyone, she used detached observation to see how the seating arrangement in their home literally enabled his monologues.
Ah,
So during a visit, she took action. She deliberately sat next to him, managing the interaction to achieve her goal of facilitating group conversation rather than being a passive audience member. As she put it, in the past I would have just thought, oh, I'm screwed. Now I'm stuck. But this time I took charge.
I love that. Taking charge of what she could control. And Holly's story.
Holly's father, Mel, would change the topic whenever she tried to share feelings due to his emotional immaturity. Classic avoidance.
Right.
So Holly used self-expression directly to manage the interaction. She simply stated her need. This time, can you just listen? I need to talk to you. And because she clearly stated her boundary and goal, he actually accepted it, and she felt heard in that moment.
Sometimes just stating the need clearly can make a difference, even if it doesn't lead to deep connection.
Exactly. Now, the source adds an important caution here. If an EI parent seems to show unexpected respect or openness when you start individuating and using these strategies,
Oh, sounds like a trap.
well, it can trigger the old healing fantasy. It's easy to think, aha, they're finally going to give me what I needed.
Right. Don't fall back into that hope.
Your job is to maintain your adult perspective, seeking an adult-to-adult relationship dynamic where possible, not trying to recreate or fix the parent-child dynamic from the past.
That's a crucial reminder. Stay grounded in the present reality.
So, understanding these patterns and changing how we interact in difficult relationships is one piece. What about building new, healthy connections? How does this knowledge help there?
Well, understanding emotional immaturity is like gaining a radar for who is capable of genuine connection. The source provides clear traits of emotionally mature people, which can serve as a really useful guide.
Okay, what are some of those key traits we should look for in others?
First, they respect boundaries. They don't intrude, they don't try to tell you what to think or feel, and they don't try to psychoanalyze you for control. There's a fundamental respect for your individual self.
That stands in stark contrast to the boundary issues common with EI parents, definitely.
Absolutely. They also value reciprocity and fairness. In a mature relationship, compromise feels mutually satisfying, not like one person is constantly pressured into concessions while the other takes. Give and take feels balanced.
Right, it doesn't feel like sacrifice all the time.
Exactly. They have emotional balance. They manage their anger constructively. They don't sulk or give the silent treatment for extended periods. They tell you what's wrong and are willing to take initiative to resolve conflict.
They don't just disappear emotionally when things get tough.
No.
Yeah.
And they're open to influence. They actually listen to your insights and considered your viewpoint rather than being rigidly stuck in their own perspective. They can learn from you.
Responsiveness is also key, the source says.
Yes, their empathy makes you feel safe. They see you positively and remember your strengths. Intimacy develops naturally through mutual sharing and feeling truly seen and accepted.
Okay.
And generally, they're simply enjoyable to be around. They're not constantly cynical or sarcastic in a way that tears things down or makes you feel bad.
That sounds nice.
Dan's story after his divorce really highlights this shift, right?
It does. He learned better self-care after being married to someone self-absorbed, and he realized his pattern of overgiving. When his new girlfriend naturally reciprocated his generosity, like paying for a concert after he paid for dinner, he was amazed.
Like people do this.
Exactly. And he recognized it as a clear sign of emotional maturity and capacity for healthy give and take. It was a totally different dynamic.
The great news is that even if you didn't learn healthy relationship habits in childhood, you absolutely can develop them now. The source outlines several new habits you can cultivate.
Okay, what are some of those?
Being willing to ask for help is a big one, especially for internalizers who are used to being self-sufficient and never wanting to bother anyone.
Right, breaking that pattern. And the source says not just asking once, but asking repeatedly if needed. It's the antidote to that traumatic feeling of helplessness from childhood.
Yes, taking action on your own behalf is crucial, actively shaping your experiences, whether it's asking for help or doing something tangible like Carissa did with her seating strategy.
Another habit is simply being yourself, whether everyone accepts you or not. stating your thoughts politely, but releasing the need to control how others react to it.
That sounds freeing.
It is. And this also includes setting limits and saying no to excessive demands on your energy or time, developing that self-compassion to know when you need to protect yourself.
That ties into having freedom from excessive empathy, doesn't it?
Yes, you can have compassion for others without losing awareness of your own limits, without feeling worse about their problems than they do. Rebecca's story about constantly feeling responsible for her complaining mother illustrates how internalizers can fall into this trap.
Right, you absorb their feelings.
Exactly. Expressing yourself authentically without needing others' understanding is another key habit. You state your truth, and the impact is theirs to own. This extends to approaching existing relationships in new ways, accepting parents as they are without needing them to change or meet old expectations.
And finally, the source talks about claiming your freedom by not wanting anything from your parent.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, breaking that old pattern where your dependency, even if just for emotional validation, gave the EI parent a sense of control. The source even mentions that sometimes instant chemistry in new relationships can unfortunately trigger these old unhealthy patterns from childhood.
Right, like a schema chemistry kind of thing.
Exactly. So awareness is key, even when things feel good initially.
It's a powerful reminder that awareness of these patterns is the first step towards making different, healthier choices in all areas of life.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we've journeyed from understanding the profound impact of emotional neglect by emotionally immature parents through the subconscious coping mechanisms we developed, like role selves and healing fantasies,
Right.
to the possibility of awakening our true selves.
And how that journey empowers us to shift our interactions in existing relationships using maturity awareness strategies.
Yeah.
And critically, build new connections based on genuine emotional maturity and reciprocal care.
The source offers a truly hopeful message throughout all of this. It emphasizes that understanding these dynamics brings relief and the freedom to live more on the basis of your genuine thoughts and feelings.
Which sounds amazing. It makes life feel lighter and easier.
It really does. The source highlights that as you resolve the confusion and frustration about the behavior of emotionally immature people, you open yourself up to a deeper appreciation of life itself.
A kind of wholeness, maybe?
Exactly. So here's a thought to leave you with, something to ponder based on the material. Consider how shifting your focus from trying to earn love or change others who are fundamentally unable to meet you. Shifting that energy instead to cultivating the emotional richness you deserve by simply knowing, accepting, and expressing your true self. How might that be the most profound way to connect deeply? Not just with others who are capable, but with the richness of life within and around you.